you, John. And we are recording these programs. And so what that means that if you want to share this program with any of your friends, just contact the museum, ask me, and I can send you a link. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to begin by reading the land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is within the ancestral territory of the Saquab people of the clear saltwater Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Saquab live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Saquab live and protect the land and the waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty. And it's such an honor to be having this gathering with you all tonight. John, it did dawn on me that with all of these wonderful windy evenings, I don't know how easy it would be, but there is a call-in number. People are not hearing as clearly or are wanting to dial in instead. And so maybe, I don't know if it helps to put that in the chat as well. So this evening, I'm honored. It is Filipino American Month, October, and I'm excited to be celebrating our Filipino American and our Indipino communities on Bainbridge. And if you've been an islander, or maybe if you visited the island, there's this wonderful community hall. It's the Filipino American Community Hall. It's for Bainbridge Island and the vicinity. And so this evening we have some very, very honored guests, and we're going to ask them about gathering in the hall and the history of the hall. So what I'm going to ask is that the guests introduce themselves. So welcome, Marisa, would you start?
Good evening. My name is Marisa Acuna. My maiden name is Morales, so I was Marisa Morales. I'm currently the vice president of the Filipino community of Bainbridge Island and vicinity. I was born and raised on the island, born in 1968, went through all the schools, Commodore, Blakely, lived on the island most of my life, still live here in Paulsbo, not too far away, but definitely still consider the island my home. Katie, you're muted.
Mr. Pete Corpuz, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Pete Corpuz. I've lived on the island for practically all my life, 77 years. But my dad was Pete Corpuz. He comes from the Philippines. My mother was Pearl Wise. She came from Canada, Nanaimo to be exact. I went in the service in 1961.
And you're a proud father of many wonderful children that I happen to know. Okay, so thank you, Pete. And Mr. Narte.
Felix V. Narte Jr., born and raised on the island, actually in Seattle, but been here since, oh boy, 70 years now, minus 10 because I was commuting from Seattle when I first got married. And went through the whole school system, and Bainbridge has always been a part of my life, and I'm still on Bainbridge Island.
And you know, I have to mention you're an opera star.
Oh.
Did the honors of being on stage with Kay Sakai Nakao and Lily Kodama for the Seattle Opera when they did a special opera about the exclusion. So I love to tease you about that one. You did a great job. It was awesome. So let's see. How about, I think we need to start maybe with understanding the founders, the Filipino American men, and the founders of the community hall. And maybe Felix, if you want to give us the names of the men that started the hall, and we'll talk about some of these men in the founders list.
Okay, the 5 original founders with the support of the community were Felix Almazan, Daniel Buxett, my dad Felix Nardi, Florentino Membrari, who was my godfather when I was baptized, and Eddie and Anacleto Corpuz.
And so you said your father was one of them. Can you tell us a story about your father?
Yes, he originally came from the Philippines in the late 20s and heard about jobs that were needed on Hawaii Island because there was a possible strike there. So he came across with a bunch of them from their area in the Philippines, near somewhere in La Union, Philippines, which is like a province. And journeyed across the ocean, steamship to Hawaii, worked in the pineapple and sugarcane fields for about a year, and eventually heard about coming to the West Coast. So a lot of them ended up on the West Coast, but my dad eventually ended up in Seattle. And most of them had hung around and known as, well, Chinatown then, but it's now, referred to as the International District. And from there, they'd hang around during the Depression, try to find jobs, whether in Alaska, they're in the salmon industry, or across the mountains in the agricultural fields.
And across the mountains, were they also necessarily strawberries, or was it all kind of
I
agriculture?
think it's fruits like apples and pears.
Would you do us the honors of, first of all, so the 5 founders are the founders of the Filipino American Hall, right? And so they got together, and how did they come up with needing a hall, or did they build the hall? How did that happen? Why are they the founders of the hall?
Well, that's the original building. It was earlier, it was I think a fairgrounds. So they decided to purchase it for their use for occasions, and they thought it was available. So being an island of strawberries and just a lot of acreage and just a place to gather when it's after the season of harvesting, it's a place to gather for baptisms and celebrations, especially during the weekends. And there's a time when I was growing up that I had to perform a local cultural dance for the elders. I think I was in 4th grade or something, somewhere in the elementary. But we also had a let's see, what you call a teacher, or who'd help us, choreographer or whatever, to help do the dances. And at first, I don't know, it was just something you had to do because it was family tradition.
That sounds great. I'm going to ask more about that a little bit later too. Would you do us a favor and read the names just that's on this list of the founders for us? Because I want to ask Pete next about some of these names.
Okay, you want me to read the whole list? Okay, Felix Almazan, Agustin Atupan, Binion Bravo, Casino Bravo, Daniel Buxett, Manuel Buxett, Nicholas Buxett, Nick Cavallo, Anacleto Corpuz, Eddie Corpuz, Maximo Corpuz, Mike Corpuz, Pete Corpuz, Vic Corpuz, Manuel Garcia, Cornelio Juliano, Johnny Madayag, Happy Maputi, Florentino Membrari, Lorenzo Membrari, Philip Membrari, Santos Membrari, Felix Nardi, Pedro Ocampo, Macario Orero Sr., Angelo Pagaduan, Roy Pagaduan, Joe Rapata, Paul Tevafunda.
I love it. Thank you so much. And it reminds me that people might not know why Pinky's not here, because Pinky was on the one that was going to be on the list, and Felix is our knight in shining armor or whatever, came and saved the day. Thank you to Felix, because Pinky's fine, but he had to take some folks to doctor's appointment, and so We are excited to have Jojo and Felix and Pinky might pop in, we hope. So now, Pete, you heard all those names, and what do you remember about those founders? Does any one of those names step out to you as a leader in that group?
Well, Felix Nardi, Felix's dad, he was probably one of the heavy spokesmen. He and my uncle Victor Corpuz, they were more or less, they were the speakers. And there was another name I think that was left out.
On the bottom?
What the heck was it? Renonas. Ben
Renonas.
Yeah, Ben Renonas, he was a teacher back in the Philippines, and when he come here, he went to my uncle Victor Morales Corpus, went to his house, and he asked Dan if he would teach all the Bayels some English, because he didn't want them speaking the language. But they picked up the language. But like I say, Ben was the and he taught a lot of them English.
Wow. People come from other places with every single kind of background. So he was one of the ones that was the English teachers.
Yes, Ben.
Uh-huh. Well, that brings me to the bottom of this page. Would someone tell us about the spirit on the bottom there? Community spirit and helpfulness. How beautiful. Does anyone want to say how you pronounce that?
Bayanihan.
Thanks, Marisa. Have you had heard of that then? Is that part of the hall?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the hall. It's one of, for those of us who don't speak the language, it's probably one of the limited amount of words that we know what it means. The community spirit and helpfulness is a very literal translation, but it really has to do with just being part of a community, part of a larger family, all the aunts, the uncles helping each other with the children, with the work, whatever it may be. The community spirit, for sure.
Say it again.
Bayanihan.
Thank you. So let's see. I was wanting you to tell us a little bit about Pete Corpus there. Your dad, could you tell us a little bit about him?
Yes, my dad come here, let's see, about 1930. He comes from La Union, Pagnotan, La Union. In fact, almost half of that list all come from the same province. And in fact, one of them had to change his name. He was a Romero back there, but he was a Corpus. I'm sorry, he was a Corpus back there, but his mother was a Romero.
I've heard that story before. It's like there's just too many Corpuses around. How about taking Romero's?
Well, that's how he become a Romero.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, those men there, they just bring back memories. I could think of them, especially Tony Oligario.
Tony's name? Uncle Tony's name isn't on there.
I love how we're finding more names to add. That's great. Maybe it's yeah. It does say that this is the Filipino Farmers Association. So maybe we shouldn't, we can, it's the founders of that association. And I was making an assumption, which always causes problems, that it was that they were the founders, but obviously they aren't all the founders. So then let's see, Marissa, just could you just note who is
am.
connected to your family?
Cornelio Giuliano is actually my maternal grandfather. That's as close as I get on the list.
That's great. And did you get to know your grandfather? Do you remember?
I do. He passed away actually when I was in the 5th grade.
Mhm.
And so there's some there wasn't a lot of cameras back then, but there are some pictures that have since become famous, like of Ross Bergagno's baptism. I think it made it in the Bainbridge Review, like back, however, 50 something, early 60s. But my grandfather was one of the favorite cooks back in the time.
That is one part of the reputation of going to Phil Am Hall. There's gonna be good food. So let's see. I was wondering then, let's go back to some memories of when Pete, when you were small and when you were young. What Felix, what were some of the, can you tell us a story about being a little boy in the hall and what it felt like?
Well, I can recall, not only because at one time when I had to do a dance, and when you can picture the hall, it was just all natural wood. Their seats were benches that hugged the wall all the way around, and you had to perform in the middle. And they had that stage up there too, and I can remember some of the, elders, some of the old time Filipinos. I mean, they had their own band. I guess somebody had drums and somebody had a guitar, and I can recall somebody had like a bass, one of those basses or something, I think. Well, actually, later on, somebody did have one of those bass players. But those are some of the little things and memories I can remember. Most of the time was hang around as kids, and you run around. But then there's a time where when things have to settle in, I could picture back in the old days, back in the corner where all the old elderly would hang around. It was a double 55-gallon barrel that was used for their furnace. One on top of the other, they just throw wood in there. So that corner of the place was always worn out because they'd hang around there and the wood would be thrown in there. But those are just some of the lists I can remember. Other than that, later on, it became different.
Thank you. Well, I just have to follow up and ask Pete about the music. Tell us more about that music.
Oh, well, my dad was a saxophone player, and Dale Quillen was the drummer. Roy Pagadwan was a trumpet.
Trumpet and sax. This is quite a band.
Oh yeah, and then we had steel guitar. Mabute, he was the steel guitar player. And let's see, Gus Kavanagh, he played the bass with the string, single string down to the wash tub. We had let's see, who else was in that band? I think my father-in-law was in there. He played the violin. Joe Rapata, he was in there, and my uncle Teddy Morales, he was a guitar player. Excuse me, Kristen, I can't think of it. It was a small band that I can't remember. But late at night, the dances went till maybe 12, maybe 1 o'clock. But my dad used to put my brother and I to sleep. He brought some blankets. He'd lay it behind the drummer, behind the piano, and then we'd go to sleep there. And then he ended up packing us both in the car. But another thing, that before the dances start, Tor Madayag would get this wax powder and throw it all over the dance floor to make it kind of slippery. And before the people would come in, us guys, little guys, would run and slide on them.
That sounds so cool. I'm telling you, that was some nightlife that Bainbridge does not have now, from what I can see. Sounds great. How fun. Wow. Well, so then, Marissa, I just want to ask you, when you were little, and I know you were little way after that band,
Not that far, but
but
after.
it was just about 10 or 15 years ago. But what was it like when you were little?
Well, I think it was a lot the same. I don't remember the band. I do remember going there just for gathering on the weekends. Um, Food, everybody would bring food. Um, One of my funny stories is I remember when they first put the fence in between the hall and Strawberry Field, and we were having some kind of gathering, and it was getting into the evening. Well, the kids were used to just running all over as if we had a great big yard. Well, now it was separated, so we got called over to eat, and it must have been in late summer because I had a brand new jacket and I was going in the 4th grade, and I jumped over that fence and the wrist of my jacket pulled right off and hung up on the fence, and I thought, oh man, I'm gonna be in so much trouble. But yeah.
Oh man, I can just imagine. Now that fence. Does anybody have a story about the fence going up? Why did this fence go up? Was there a real a big reason or no particular reason?
I don't think there was any particular reason. I think it was, just in that 70s, when people were identifying their properties and.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So then,
Well, the army base put the first fence up for the Nike site, and that went all the way up to the ball field.
oh, right. So the Nike, tell me what years was the Nike site? Was that the 50s or 60s or?
Yeah, the 50s and 60s.
So things started changing then. I mean, it wasn't only the Nike site, but in the 50s and 60s, before that, there was work that happened there too. There was all the bands and everything like that. But what happened, there was also the
Berry shed and berry deliveries from all the farms to the cannery.
so the farms would all bring their berries there, and then from there they'd go to the cannery.
Yeah. They take them to Seattle, where they'd be processed. There was processed on the island, right where.
That's where the movie theater is down in Winslow.
Domsey
Cinema
Farms.
used to be. Yeah. Also, before that, it was a strawberry place. They processed, clean it, pack it in 5-gallon cans, and it was shipped to Seattle, where they made the jam or sugar was added.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But you said something about the fencing that went up. That was back then. Of course, then it was the Cold War, and I could remember as a kid going up. Our strawberry field hugged that cyclone fence that says U.S. property, no trespassing. And I remember picking on the last row, and I could recall the sirens going off and the Army soldiers running across, and they had those bunkers. And then all of a sudden, you see 2 Nike missiles go up. But back then, I didn't have a movie camera or didn't even think about it then. But it was just to see that, it's just part of their drill, and it's just amazing that. And that's why that whole fence that was fenced off, because the government wanted that during that time.
The missile silos are still there. They use the water. They're empty, but they use the water that's stored in that silo to water the fields and baseball, softball fields.
Interesting. Very interesting. And so there was like the Cold War, there was a presence here during the Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
And then, as far as the cannery goes, where there were different kinds of berries. There were strawberries and then raspberries. But why did the berries disappear, do you think?
Well, I used to listen to my uncles talk, and then they weren't getting the right price, and Stokely's was the primary carrier for the strawberries, raspberries, and they wouldn't give them a good price. A lot of them said, "Okay, we're just not going to." There's only one strawberry field on the island now.
Yeah, yeah. That's rough. It's such hard work. And then when you have the prices that you need to ask, and then they won't give you the prices, then that's really hard.
Right. Yeah.
And so then people went. People start going to have other careers and went to college, and the younger ones started their own families, and so there was kind of a quieter time for the hall. And so Felix, you came in around the 90s, and so tell us a little bit about when it was a quieter time and then the idea of renovation. How did that happen?
Well, I believe it sat for a while. I got there probably back probably high school years in the 60s, late 60s, late 70s. And it just sat there, and somehow some of the people around here decided, let's try to renovate that and get that going again. And it was pretty run down. So we had a lot of support in the community, and of course we had some money coming from the state or the government or grants and all that, and that kind of got it going. And you see it now, but it took a while just to get it back there, and as its original historical, situation, because it was recognized at the state, local, and national as part of the memories back then and the historical value back then.
They did an amazing job of the renovation by adding the kitchen and, bringing it up to code with, and plugs all around. And so we are really able to use it. They also did a really great job of maintaining some really rustic parts of the old building. The floor and the walls, you can see, are it's not all plumb and straight like it is these days. They just built it and it stood up and it withstood the test of time. But we're certainly grateful for both that original building and the renovation that gives us all we have now.
It is a special building. When you walk in, there's a feeling of reverence, for the past, and it does feel so wonderful. I'm so grateful that the community came together. I think John might have, I don't know, John, do you have that historic places? There's a certificate, and I think that was done in 1990. Let's see, 95.
Yeah, 94, 95.
So, Felix, did this certificate come before the renovation, you think, or did it, because of this certificate, you were able to get some support?
I believe it came a little after, I thought.
Yeah.
It took a while because, I guess it took a little while after.
It's funny how that happens. It's like you got to kind of start working on a beautiful old place before the paperwork and everything really gets moving. Well, congratulations to the whole community. It's just it's a wonderful place. So, Marisa, I want to ask you, how did you get to where you are now in the organization?
I would have to say that when I was in my late 20s and going into my 30s, I found my family, my husband and children, and it was just a I was just drawn back to the hall. It's a place. It was running vibrant. There was great energy and good people, and I also saw my elders working in there very hard. So like I just go to attend, and I see people who are 30, 35 years my elder, and I go, oh man, it's feel kind of bad that Auntie Feling's doing all those dishes, or that Mina's, wrapping that silverware. And so I was just drawn to help. These are really the kind of things that we're taught from very, very young age. We're trying to do a better job of teaching the children even younger now. I was drawn back to help my elders out of respect for them and all the things that they've done for us over all these years. And so I came and I started attending, and then I started helping, and then I was volunteering, and here I am. That's my path.
Wow. I just, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. I can imagine. It's true. I mean, I've gone in and seen people who look like grandmas, or great grandmas, and they're just working as fast as you can imagine, and it's such an inspiration. And so I was wondering, in what ways does the community use that hall, Marisa? What types of groups come to the hall?
In recent years, it is used for just about anything you can imagine, as it always has been for baptisms, weddings, memorials, engagement parties. We have family reunions. We have local groups. Can I say their names? Like Weight Watchers uses it. Swerve uses it. It's a group of ladies. I'm sorry, I forget what the acronym stands for. Studio tours. Bainbridge in Bloom has used it as a hub. Bainbridge Gardens uses it just as a parking lot, as a hub, for when they do their Halloween specials down there. So we are absolutely open to have anyone come celebrate or respect any occasion for any reason at our hall. We're very open.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that reminds me, I would love it if we maybe put up the link, John, to the hall. And also, there's something happening this weekend.
Trunk or treat. Trunk or treat.
Tell us about Trunk or Treat.
Tracy. I would like to call in Tracy Tabafunda. So we're having a trunk or treat this weekend. It is, unfortunately, I honestly don't know what time it is. But basically,
Tracy, we're going to keep asking you to tell.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi, Tracy.
Hello, everyone. So we're having a trunk or treat this weekend. It is basically, we're inviting all the children to come. It's from 4 to 6 p.m. And I believe we have about 8, maybe 10 cars that are going to be set up and decorated and handing out treats to all the children that want to come. We do a lot of our community events. Gene, our president, it was his idea that we needed to do this. We always support all our children in our community, and we invite all the kids to come because our children are our future leaders, and we want them to be a part of the hall. When they come to the hall, even if they're driving by and they see an event there, they think that they're missing a party when it's a rental. And they are like, hey, what's going on at the hall? And, like, aren't we going to the hall when we drive by? And we're like, no, that's a rental. No, that's not for us. And they kind of feel left out when they see that they're not included. But we do our events, Easter, Christmas and Halloween.
Strawberry Festival.
Strawberry
Mhm.
Festival, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
That's okay.
So I wanted to encourage people, if you have any questions, to put them into the chat. And we might have time to have people just unmic yourself, but if you have questions, it would be great to put them into the chat. And I just was wondering, so I know, Marisa, you had a couple of questions for Felix. Do you want to ask Felix a couple questions about the community hall and being a
I just thought that he was the most appropriate person because he was involved with the renovations during that time. Again, I was, in my 20s and not as involved with the hall yet. So I just appreciate you coming, Jojo. And of course, Uncle Pete, we love you. Thanks for your stories. They're so much fun. I would like to say, if anyone who's watching has any digital content that you're willing to share with the Filipino community, whether it's personal or you think related in some way, we have recently created a website and we're having a difficult time obtaining digital material to put on that website. So philam of bi@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat or you can write it down. We're very interested in photos, recent or especially historical photos of yourself, your family, your friends, maybe even people you don't know. We're hoping that this is just something that we can put together to memorialize our forefathers, to include our second, third, and fourth generations, and to perpetuate that for our children in the years to come.
That's a great request. Please. I know even I have pictures at the Strawberry Festival and all kinds of things like that. So maybe, is there someone, there's a question in the chat and it's about what kinds of parts of the culture do you especially love to celebrate when you're there? So like, what are there foods, or are there maybe dances, or are there different traditions that you really love that you'd like to share with people who might not know about Filipino American culture, or who might not know about Indipino culture? Anybody want to share, like, why a Strawberry Festival? Maybe we could start there. Does anybody want to explain the Strawberry Festival?
Gina, you want to say anything? Gina Corpuz did help resurrect the Strawberry Festival back in, I believe it was the late 80s and the 90s, during the period when the renovations were going on. We're very grateful for that. I mean, it's my understanding of the history, and they had the Strawberry Festival has been going since like 1943. My great aunt was the first queen, and they'd make these magnificent floats and roll them down through Winslow. I'm not sure where. Look, Uncle Pete has a story. But this started a long time ago. I believe it was either the beginning or the culmination of the harvest, and just a way to celebrate with each other and celebrate each other and the hard work that was put in, and being grateful and thankful for the harvest. Back in the early days, it's my understanding that the queens had some volunteerism that were required. Sometimes they had to sell tickets. I'm not super clear on that history, but.
Well, how about this? I saw some joking around with Pete and Felix too. So I'm a little like, Pete, do you want to fill us in a little bit? And then I'd love if Gina wants to share. But Pete, do you want to tell us about the Strawberry Festival back in the day?
Oh, back in the day. Oh, geez.
Well, you can tell about the Strawberry Festival in any way you want.
Well, there was a parade downtown Winslow. I was probably about 7 years old. Tommy Almuella was, of course, he's a year older, and they had this big truck, I think belonged to my Uncle Garcia, and they put strawberry plants in it to represent, Strawberry Festival, and big sign on there, welcome to Filipino Home for Strawberry Festival. And I can remember those guys just running up to the truck and flipping the strawberries off, which was fine. They were gonna rot anyway. But yeah, they picked it clean. That was a good memory.
That's great. An edible float. That's great. Gina, do you want to add in a little about the festival or the meaning of it and why you brought it back?
You-
Oh, you're still mute. I don't know if we can you unmute, Gina? Do you want to?
Okay.
Good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. So that actually just makes me laugh when Pete was talking about that, because one thing about the Filipino community is that we love our traditions and we like to keep things going every year. And I remember when I was really young, used to run around the hall and fall asleep. The Strawberry Festival was a fundraiser. So the candidates for the royal court and for the queen had to sell tickets. So it wasn't even really based on whether or not you were beautiful or you were smart or talented. It was how many tickets you could sell. And so, of course, they would want to, sometimes there were sailors who would come over from Bremerton to attend the dances. And some of those sailors, I see Pete laughing, would spend their whole paycheck just buying tickets. But it was really a good tradition for the community because we raised a lot of money doing that. But I'm really glad that the tradition is being kept up because that's really what keeps a community alive and well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's something. What's interesting too is it's getting a little bit better known now, but it's funny working in the historical museum where people would hear that it happened and they'd feel so left out. I mean, not people from the community necessarily, but it's like, wait, how do I find out about this? And I'm like, well, you just got to know who you know and you got to check in with them, Now, of course, with the beautiful website, that won't be a problem, but look out, you might have tons of people because people love the Strawberry Festival. So, do we have, let's see, there's a question from Christina, and she asks that I've been asked in Kitsap what the difference is between the two communities and Facebook pages related to Bainbridge Island, Indipino and Filipino. Should we think about it as educational versus social focuses in the local community?
I would start by saying that that the Filipino founders married the native women, which gives us native, back then called Indians, possibly, right? So Indipinos is where we get that name. So I think Gina's group has done a great job of educating the community about the importance of these mothers, these families, these future generations. Whereas as the Phil-Am, basically we have been, we're working on education. We're working on like our webpage. We're just taking care of the hall, taking care of our community, and keeping things going. I think Gina and her group have done a great job on the education side, and maybe would even share some of their educational, knowledge through our website about both communities. It's really one community, but it's just yes and no. Educational, yes. Social, yes. All of the above at the same time.
And my experience is be a part of it all.
Amen.
Be a part of it all. It reminds me a little bit of the library and how there's like the Kitsap Regional Library, and then there's the Bainbridge Library, and then there's the Library Foundation, and and then there's the Parks people, and then there's the Parks Foundation, and then there's the Bainbridge Japanese American Community, and then there's the Exclusion Memorial. So culturally, things, you just have to tune in to each one, and all of them blend together.
Learn what
There's
you can and absorb what you can and enjoy it all.
a lot of overlap and stuff. So, but Gina, did you want to chime in?
Sure. So just to be clear, all of the members of the Indipino organizations are still lifetime members of the Filipino American community, because our fathers and uncles were many of the founders, and our fathers really left us a legacy, and they left us with the Filipino Hall, which is really our monument for the community to know who we are, because it's visible and it provides an opportunity for us to interact with the community on a social and a cultural level. Whereas our Indipino organization has one purpose, and it's educational. And we love to be social beings too. So we just like to go and eat and dance. But our focus really is to provide educational resources.
Yeah, that's clear. That's great. Yeah, and I also remember that the Indipino. I was listening to stories about the Indipino community. And in the 70s, I guess, there was a wonderful, huge conference, like the biggest one ever in Seattle, Filipino American Conference. And people came from all over, like they hitchhiked to get there. And 10 people from Bainbridge Island went to this incredible conference. And they were able to introduce the Filipino American conference to Indipino, that the Indipino culture too, so but then so that some of those people came to see Bainbridge Island and to see the Filipino American Hall. I don't know if that's true, but that's kind of the something I think I heard from Joanne. Well, we have only 6 minutes. I'm sorry, I got a little chatty there. Thank you, Gina, and thank you, Marisa, and Pete, and Felix. I could listen to your stories of Bainbridge Island, from the everything you've learned from your parents and grandparents, and just really appreciate all the hard work and contribution that you've given to the, what to make Bainbridge, So thank you, Felix, and thank you, Pete. Thank you, Gilda, who helped us too, and to Christina for helping with the Zoom. And thanks, Marissa and Tracy, for helping with this too. And Gina, thank you so much for your input and for being here. We will be taking a break from the History Museum at the Library program. Our next one will be in January. And so, John, I want to thank you for an incredible year of partnership. I look forward to the next 2 months, helping design what we're going to be doing for 2022. And why don't we see, does anybody want to undo your mic and ask a quick last question? We probably have room for a question.
Carol had a question that's in the chat. It's above Christina's. It's about food.
Oh, Carol, would you unmic and ask your question? I mean, unmute.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, sure. I'm
Thank you.
done eating dinner. So yeah, this is very interesting. Well, I love to learn about cultures by the experiencing the food. And I've been to one of your festivals. So I'd love to know, if I were to come to a potluck at a celebration, what kinds of foods would show up there that might be unique to your culture?
I think that you are always going to see some form of adobo. Chicken or pork is very common. Lumpia is a beloved dish that we will painstakingly make for large groups and is considered a special treat even in our homes for small functions. Pancit's another favorite that we get a lot. We feel like it's a special treat because it's not easy for everyone to make, or to make right anyway.
And what is that? What was that last one?
Pancit. So it's rice noodles with just a little bit of vegetables and just a little bit of meat. So sometimes a little bit of meat. And the noodles are just flavorful and delicious.
Yep, I think I've eaten that.
Yeah. Always going to see a pot of rice at our function. Am I forgetting anything? There are some special dishes. Diniguan is the name of my personal favorite dish. Look at the boys laughing up there. Everybody loves diniguan. That is a cultural dish. It's actually made with, it's made of pork and delicious. Again, a special treat. Bibinka rice cakes. Those are always fun and nummy. That's a great treat. Am I forgetting anything, boys?
Sunuman, rice cake, brown rice cake, Sunuman.
Rice cakes. There's a number of different rice cakes, but I don't think I've ever had a bad one.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a lovely way to wrap up our program heading into the holidays season, where we all get to have yummy food. And I just wanted to know, John, if you wanted to wrap up. We're going to end here in 2 minutes, then we'll stop recording. And we're grateful for all of you who showed up. Thank you so much, John.
Oh, yes. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thank you to our panelists. This program, excellent conversation tonight. Again, learned a lot about our community here on the island. Always happy to connect that way. As Katie shared, there is no history at the library for November or December. They just get too close to the holidays, so we don't put you through that pain, and we don't put ourselves through the same thing. So the next one will be January 26, 2022 at 7 p.m. So look on the History Museum's website. They'll have the URL link and the panelists and the topic.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having us, John. Thanks, Katie.